Good afternoon and welcome. The Sacramento County Metro Cable Commission, along with the League of Women Voters of Sacramento, are sponsoring today's forum featuring mayoral candidates running for the March 5th primary. Today's forum is being broadcast live here in the Board of Supervisors chambers on Metro Cable TV Channel 14 and will be broadcast at a number of times prior to the March 5th primary election. You may check the rebroadcast schedule by looking at www.youtube.com/MetroCable14. I am Tricia Erhammer. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Sacramento, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of both men and women that encourages citizens to be informed and participate in their government at all levels. The League does not support nor oppose any candidate or political party. Rather, the League provides information and moderates candidates forums such as this to help voters learn about candidates, issues, and make informed choices at the polls. However, we do take positions on public policies issues after careful study and consensus. Today's questions have been developed by members of the community and reviewed by the League of Women Voters. Candidates have not had access to these questions. Each candidate will have a 1.5-minute opening statement. Next, each candidate will be offered a 1-minute answer to each question asked. And finally, as time allows, each candidate will offer a 1-minute closing. Candidates have drawn cards for their order of opening statements and their seating order. Here today, it's my pleasure to introduce 4 of the 6 candidates running for mayor for Sacramento. To my far right, Dr. Flo Kofer. To my near right, Mr. Steve Hansen. To my left, Dr. Richard Pan. And to my far left, Mr. Julius Engel. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. We have a timekeeper. If you'll raise the sign, you'll get a 30-second warning and a stop. And I ask that you truly stop when you see that sign. Now, it is time for opening statements. Dr. Flo Kofer.
Hello, my name is Dr. Flo Kofer, and I'm running for mayor of Sacramento because, like so many of you, I am incredibly frustrated by watching the challenges facing our city continue to get worse, and I do believe that solutions are possible. I'm the daughter of 2 public school teachers, and my parents taught me that community takes care of one another. Anyone in our neighborhood, even if they weren't former students, but certainly including former students, knew that if they wanted to apply to college, they could ring our doorbell and sit at our dining room table and get support for their applications. That's what supporting community meant to my parents. Unfortunately, when I was 11, we were at my aunt's birthday dinner and my dad collapsed and died from heart disease. My dad protected everyone in our community, but unfortunately, policies didn't exist to protect him. He started smoking at a time when the tobacco lobby lied about the harms of cigarettes and in a predatory fashion really marketed their products in our communities. And so I became a public health professional because I wanted to make sure that policies were there to make sure we lived long and healthy lives. And in Sacramento, I've rolled up my sleeves and been a part of making sure that birth control is included with no copay in Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And I've also served on 3 city commissions, including chairing the Measure U committee for 4 terms to make sure our tax dollars are spent in the right way. And I'm running for mayor to make sure that our city is run with vision and that we have a purpose for what we're doing and making sure that we are able to serve Sacramento in its bright and thriving future.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Thank you, and thank you to the League and Metro Cable for hosting this forum. My name is Steve Hansen, and I'm running for mayor because when I was born, I didn't know I could ever be anything. My parents didn't go to college. I was born into a life of poverty, and we moved around a lot, experienced homelessness and domestic violence. And as I grew up, I knew I wanted a different future for myself. I enlisted in the Army National Guard to help pay for college, and after Don't Ask, Don't Tell passed, I took a different direction. I came here to Sacramento to make my life. Now, 22 years later, I've not only been a former city council member involved in many boards and commissions, but now as a dad of 2 young boys. The city we love has become unrecognizable to many. The crises of homelessness, housing, and public safety, our economic environment were things that I warned about when I first ran 12 years ago. Since leaving office, our city's not on the right track, and I decided I could complain or I could do something, and so I'm here to earn your vote to be our next mayor so we can put the city back on track. This is our city, and it's our future, and we have to fight for this place that we love. And I encourage you to look at my website, steveforsacramento.com, and join me. I'd love to earn your vote and have your support so we can fix the city that we love and enjoy a better future for everyone.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Penn.
Thank you so very much. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Metro Cable, for hosting this forum to educate the voters. I'm Dr. Richard Pan. I'm a physician, educator, small business owner, and former state senator, and I'm thrilled to be running for mayor of Sacramento. We have a very vibrant and exciting city. Now, as a physician and public health expert, I've spent my life working to solve tough problems and improve the lives of my patients and the community. And I first ran for office because I saw a need for a type of leadership and problem solving that wasn't driven by politics or political agendas, but was driven by a desire to create practical solutions rooted in facts. Leadership that would create policy that would actually make real, tangible improvements in people's lives instead of kicking the can down the road or appeasing a special interest. And that's why I'm running for mayor of Sacramento. Our city is in crisis. We are facing a crisis of leadership that has let too many important issues like homelessness, affordable housing, public safety spiral out of control. We need leadership that will ask tough questions, dig into the details, create no-nonsense solutions with urgency, and that brings people together to get things done. That is who I am, and that is what I have done throughout my career as a physician, public health expert, small business owner, and legislator. I will bring a renewed focus on solving problems, not playing politics. I'm a problem solver, and my only agenda is to get the city we all love back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Metro Cable for having us and getting the word out to the people. That is crucial in any election, especially this one. I'm running for mayor because I want to make Sacramento a better place to live. I think Sacramento is beautiful. I think it's one of the greatest, if not the greatest place to live. But there are a lot of things that we can do better. And we all have very prolific past education, we're well educated, and have a lot of experience that have formed us. But what is the new mayor going to do for you now? What will the new mayor do for you now? And I have my platform. You can read it on engelformayor.com, number 4 for 4. The homeless problem, of course, is number 1. What I intend to do there is form a triad with Sheriff Cooper and DA Ho, who have already made inroads into this problem. I now drive down Roseville Road with a sense of safety because the homeless have been successfully moved from there. I was always concerned someone might run out from a tent or in between tents and I might hit them with my car. I was very scared. So that is being resolved now, and I will join them, not oppose them, when I'm mayor. I've established a minimum wage of $19.50 and with tiered increases. Reopen Rancho Seco to reduce our SMUD bill, and we could find other ways to reduce it as well. But I'm tired of $400 a month. I'm sure you are too. Improve our school security. Our future is our children. We can't just hope nothing happens. We have to be ready. I have 4 years of Homeland Security, and I was military police and security police in the Air Force and Army. And finally, free parking downtown.
Thank you.
I'm asking for your vote.
Now we'll move to the question and answer portion of this forum. The first question will first be directed to Mr. Steve Hansen. What are the top 3 issues facing the city of Sacramento? And are these your top 3 budgetary goals if elected mayor of Sacramento?
Thank you for that question. After talking to thousands of Sacramentans on the campaign trail over the last 7 and 8 months, it's very clear there are 3 top priorities for everyone, and they're the same priorities I have. First is our homelessness crisis is simply unacceptable. The city, the county, our school districts, our state government, and our federal government all have to be at the table to make sure that we can address it in the way that our voters want, which is a compassionate but firm response, and the conditions on our streets for the capital city of California is just not acceptable. Second, housing. We have to make sure we build housing at all levels of affordability. We can't subsidize our way out of our housing shortage, but we can ensure that we're getting our fair share of state and federal funds and lowering the barriers to improving housing. Finally, economic development. We have to make sure our small businesses aren't continuing to endure the enormous amounts of red tape and obfuscation that has prevented them from opening and thriving, especially as our city's economy continues to shift away from state government.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
I, too, have been talking to voters from across the city and hearing the same thing. Our top priorities, and my top priorities, are addressing our homeless crisis, to be sure that we also ensure people are safe in our streets and our parks, and also to ensure that we grow our economy and have more good jobs for people here in Sacramento. There are too many people who are suffering on the streets of Sacramento. We need to find them housing. We need to get them help. We also need to keep people from becoming unhoused. These are things that I will prioritize with urgency. Too often, people are not seeing the leadership necessary to actually make headway against this problem, which just seems to be spiraling further and further out of control. People are also expressing that they're feeling unsafe in Sacramento. They're afraid to go to their parks, their schools, businesses. That is not unacceptable. That's the fundamental role of city government and of government itself, to keep people safe. And then finally, when we can address the issues of the unhoused and public safety, we are going to have the opportunity to grow our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Yes, as I've already stated earlier, I have my 5 priorities. Resolving the homeless issue, of course, is number 1. We all agree on that. Unlike my opponents, I have told you what I intend to do, and that is form a triad with the sheriff and the district attorney's office. I have a long law enforcement background. I used to be a DA, also a criminal defense attorney as well, and they've worked for Homeland Security. So I'm very ready to join forces with them. And in a year, I would think we could probably resolve the problem. If we do something about it, and that has just started with them, and they are newly in office, so it's very understandable. A minimum wage of $19.50 is a must. Other cities have minimum wage, like San Francisco. And doing that will make our economy much healthier. People have more money to spend in the community, and our merchants will keep experienced employees. Also, those of you who have teenage children, they'll be bringing home more money from their job, part-time as it may be, and that's better on you. It's better on your household economy, because you have to spend less on them because they're bringing home more. And dovetailing with the minimum wage I've talked about is the free parking in downtown Sacramento.
Thank you very much. Dr. Flo Kofer.
Sacramentans are in agreement about what their top 3 issues are, and they are certainly housing and homelessness, public safety, and making sure that we are able to invest in an environment that allows us to be economically safe, as well as have a safe environment when it comes to our climate. The challenge really is making sure that we are doing what's necessary to be able to execute those goals. And so I have, in my leadership capacity with the city, really pushed to make sure that we're not continuing failed policies of criminalizing homelessness without telling people where they can be. And so I'm setting a goal that we won't have any kids. The 1,500 kids sleeping on the street will not be sleeping on the street by the end of my first term. I'm setting a goal that we're going to spend our public safety dollars with really responsibly and making sure that we're actually getting safety outcomes, because Sacramento went 2 years without youth homicides, and we have a 40% reduction in violent crime, and we can do that again. And I also served on the Climate Commission when we executed the Climate Action Plan, and we can make sure that we electrify Sacramento and have those goals in place to be able to spend our dollars wisely.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question, and it will first be directed to Dr. Richard Pan. Do you support the right to safe legal abortion access under the terms set out in California Proposition 1 constitutional amendment? And if so, given the increase of harassments of patients and staff outside reproductive health centers, what will you do to support access to reproductive health care and abortion access?
Thank you. I'm proud to have been actually an endorser of that initiative in the state Senate. That's where it was placed on the ballot, and a strong supporter of reproductive rights for women here in Sacramento, in California, and in fact, actually across our country. We need to be sure that people actually have access to those services. And part of that is also ensuring that they have access to the places delivering that care. I actually authored a law to ensure that clinics who provide abortion services are not put under undue burden. But I also, having visited clinics and also as a physician myself, have seen people try to obstruct or intimidate people seeking care. And it is important that, as mayor of the city of Sacramento, that we be sure that people are not being intimidated from getting necessary health care. That is not about speech, that's about denying people care. And so I will work to be sure with our DA, who has endorsed me, and with our police department, ensure people have access to care. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Yes, I do support the measure. The abortion issue has been kicked around many times. Roe versus Wade was reversed, and everyone thinks that's the end of it. It's not. There are other constitutional protections. Now, the only other lawyer up here besides me is my friend Hanson, but to boil it down, there's other features of the Constitution you have to comply with. For example, the statute has to be understandable, and it can't be overly broad, and most of all, it has to have a reasonable basis. It's called the rational basis test. Most statutes pass it easily. Here, I don't know why this one medical procedure has to be stigmatized or removed. It is a medical necessity. If a patient needs that procedure, then they should have that procedure. And life really doesn't begin at 15 weeks. I don't believe that. It's just one organ functioning when plenty of others are not. But it's a medical decision. And sometimes medical decisions are very difficult and unpleasant, moving an organ, severing a limb. Why should this be any different? Leave it up to the patient. Leave it up to the doctor.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I'm really proud to have a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood and to also be a reproductive health epidemiologist. That's what my degree is in. And so I was a champion of Prop 1. I actually worked on the campaign to make sure that it passed in California. And I'm really proud of the work that's happened in California to make sure that we are ensuring access not only for people in California, but all across the country. What I'm concerned about is access is the first step, but there's more than access that we need to make sure we protect. It's also making sure that people are able to take advantage of the services that exist, that they are able to do so free from harassment. And as the only woman running for mayor, I know what it's like to try to access clinical services and be harassed on the way in. And it is not appropriate at all for that to happen. And so we need to make sure that those boundaries are held, that people are able to access their services without having their privacy violated, and that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that that continues to happen. And that is a priority for me as your next mayor, is making sure that people are able to access health care without there being any challenges.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Thank you. I'm very proud to have supported Prop 1, endorsed it. The Dobbs decision was an atrocity. In California, women are not second class under the law thanks to Proposition 1, but unfortunately in front of the Supreme Court, that is still the case. As council member, I fought to protect patients going to our Planned Parenthood clinics. In my district, I had both of them in the city. We made sure that women and the men who went there for vasectomies, whether for reproductive rights or other reproductive health services or other things, all felt safe accessing critical health care. I am also proud of my 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, but I've been doing this work for over 20 years, whether in high school and college, working to defend women's right to choose, at Equality California as legislative director, partnering with reproductive health advocates, and in my work now, where we represent reproductive freedom for all. I believe fundamentally we all deserve the right to make decisions over our own bodies, and that's no different in this case.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question, and will first be directed to Julius Engel. To what extent do you support a minor's right to access confidential services such as family planning, abortion, prenatal care, and sexually transmitted infection screening and treatment, including a minor's release from school to obtain these services? Please explain.
Well, I remember, I think we all remember when we were young, as a teenager, I always felt too restricted and I couldn't do what I wanted to do and get things that I needed for health, for good reasons. So I support confidentiality for children. They have a certain level of privacy away from their parents, as well as adults do from other things. So I think they should have access to these services. Now, when the services are done or something major has been decided, then the parents should be in on it and should have some input. There can be exceptions to that, certainly emergency circumstances. But I do feel access is information. Information is always helpful. Information is always a symbol of our free society.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
Harm reduction is one of the cornerstones of public health, and as a public health professional, it's really important to me. And one of the ways that we reduce harm is making sure that people have access to the services they need, even when they're under 18. And I know sometimes that can feel challenging to parents because they want to be involved in what's happening with their kids. But the truth is that many times kids will go to their peers or someone else when they need support, and we want to make sure that they're safe and healthy overall. And so I am in support of making sure that kids have access to confidential services. I actually had the privilege of attending a public school that actually had a clinic that was run by, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and run by the University of Pittsburgh nursing department, so that we were able to access those services right on campus, so we didn't even have to leave. And as someone who has supported the California school-based health services across the state, I'm really excited about making sure that we expand those in schools so that students don't have to miss instruction, but have access to services in a confidential way to be able to make sure their health and well-being is attained and maintained.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
It's really important to remember that California voters have shot down ballot measures at least 3 times in my memory to increase these restrictions on minors. It's also important to remember that not all young people are safe in their homes. Some of them are abused by their very family members who live beside them. And when you need help, you may not be able to talk to your family about those very things, but you do need the help of a medical professional, a social worker, and others to talk about those things. Maybe it's an STI, maybe it's a reproductive health issue where your abuser impregnated you. It's really important that our kids, especially our teens, are safe. And in the end, as mayor, I'll make sure that our education system is robust when it comes to helping young people know that they have the right to safe and high-quality medical services, because it's the foundation of everything in their lives. And in the end, I hope that our community continues to work together, not just with our schools, but with each other, to make sure these kids are protected.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Penn.
I'm a pediatrician, and I take care of youth, and I work with their families. I actually was also the medical consultant for one of our school districts here in the city. And I know how important it is to involve parents in the health care of their children. What that also means, though, is that the parents also have to be able to trust their healthcare professional, their pediatrician, and their child. And what these laws, which are extremely important, that children are able to consent to their own health care, particularly for sensitive services, is because parents want to be sure what's best for their children. And too often, children may not want to disclose, if only because they're afraid of embarrassing or they feel shame. Hopefully that's, and so as a doctor, I know how important that these laws are to assure children have access to very important care. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question. It will first go to Dr. Flo Kofer. Each of you mentioned that homelessness is a critical issue here in Sacramento. The number of unhoused individuals in Sacramento continues to skyrocket. We know that this requires a multifaceted and budget-driven solution at all levels of government. What are your short and long-term goals?
The first thing we need to do to be able to address this challenge, which is affecting everyone in Sacramento, is that we need to stop the failed policy that our city has insisted on of telling people where they can't be and criminalizing where they can't be without answering the essential question of where can people go. And so we need to be able to set up places where people can do their laundry, can use the restroom facilities, can have a shower, and can charge their cell phones. Next, that will allow us to be able to triage people who may need mental health or substance use services into some of the existing housing that we have, whether that is, whether those are apartment complexes that we are able to negotiate rates with, or even some of our smaller businesses that have already agreed with the city that they would be willing to house people with a long-term lease. We also need to make sure that people who are currently housed maintain their housing, because for every one person we rehouse, 3 more become unhoused. And then, of course, finally, we need to spend the majority of our dollars by saving money doing the cost-efficient thing on the first 2 on long-term, supportive, affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Thank you. I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually put out a plan on homelessness, and you can go read it on my website, steveforsacramento.com/plan. We know right now, and I know because as a kid, I experienced homelessness. I lived in a domestic violence shelter. We moved around a lot. We know that this crisis is a lot more than just one city can handle, because we have this going on all up and down the coast. Well, we don't know, though, is where they come from. What is causing people consistently to fall into homelessness through our data? We do know that drugs and alcohol are a major part of it, and sometimes the lack of housing is a part of it. The city has a role to play in this, but in combination with the county, the state, and the federal governments, we need to make sure that while we help people, we're also firm. We can't have people camping at our playgrounds, in our neighborhoods, next to our schools. It's just not safe. And as mayor, I'll make sure that we build housing. I built more affordable housing in my district than anyone else during my time on council, and I'll look forward to continuing my work on this issue.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
You know, our homelessness crisis has been spiraling out of control, and while certainly homelessness has risen, not only in California, but across the nation, unfortunately, it's gotten worse, particularly here in Sacramento. And so there are several steps we need to take to address this crisis. First of all, we need to help people stay housed. So the people who are at risk of becoming unhoused, we need to keep them housed. In fact, I authored legislation in the state of California to provide both housing assistance and rental subsidies for people on Medi-Cal, called CalAIM. We need to implement that. We also need to increase the amount of housing. We have a housing shortage that drives up the cost of housing. It also means there's not enough places for people to go. So, and then we need to be sure we provide supports for people when they're in housing, so they can be successful. And finally, we need to have a place for people to go. So it's going to take some time to build housing. I'm going to try to speed that up as much as possible as mayor, but also we need to be sure that there are also places people can go so they don't have to stay on the streets that are much more immediately available. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Those are all good starters, what I've heard from my colleagues, but I'm a little more specific. I believe the voters need to have something to really hang their hat on. The current administration bought a $10 million plot of land or tract of land in Natomas for the homeless. It's a very good start, but that's it. It's just sitting there. We need to do something. Step 1 isn't good enough. It's nothing unless you go to step 2, 3, and 4. We have units, these small units, almost cute units, that have everything a person needs to live. And we were talking about that maybe 2 years ago, and that was the end of that. So we need to use that tract of land, and we need to provide options for our homeless. Where do they want to go? Where can we send them? And we need to have a plan of what we're going to look for. And I'm going to look in other jurisdictions. I'm going to look at available land here. I'm going to look at what we already have. We're going to look at the units, tents, and other services if they want. They can't have services forced upon them. But our DA and our sheriff has already started resolving the homeless problem, and I will join them.
Thank you. We will move to another question, but it is still related. And this will first be directed to Mr. Steve Hansen. Sacramento does not have an inclusionary housing policy, one that requires new developments to include a portion of their apartments and homes to be affordable to lower income residents. How will you approach an inclusionary policy, and will you support one that requires mixed income developments?
Thank you. I'd just like to respond by saying we do have an inclusionary housing policy. It's called the Mixed Income Housing Ordinance, and it gives developers a choice of whether to include subsidized affordable housing in it or to pay a fee to the city. Our economy in Sacramento is much weaker than the Bay Area, but we've gotten an influx of people moving here because our housing tends to be cheaper. So what the city's tried to do is draw down as much money as we can from state and federal sources. And I will say that the state government, after getting rid of redevelopment, which was a primary funding source for us, has provided very little money on a system-wide level for our region, let alone our city, to effectively build affordable housing. And I do intend to create a plan, a regional plan with other elected leaders so that we can effectively lobby our state and federal government for those resources. But we also need to build as much housing built by the private sector as possible because we cannot subsidize our way out of this problem. One unit of affordable housing can be $650,000 to $1 million, $650,000 to $1 million.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
Yes. Well, first of all, certainly support that we have mixed income developments. But I think, as was previously said, we do have existing laws in place. One of the things that I will be striving for is to maximize the amount of housing we produce, including affordable housing. What we can't do is create a situation where people stop building housing or tremendously slow that down and just build over the border where they're beyond the reach of Sacramento's ordinances. All right, that does not help benefit Sacramento. We also need to have more urgency in trying to speed our construction of housing. So certainly as mayor, we want to be sure that, for example, we make permitting much more efficient so that when people are constructing housing that there's more certainty and that they can get approvals faster, right? We should do everything we can to lower the cost of housing here in the city of Sacramento so we can maximize the production of housing, and particularly affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel?
And I agree with my colleagues. Since the beginning of time, housing has always been an issue for people, and that's a must. Because if people don't have housing, all sorts of bad things can happen. I agree with mixed housing. You don't want to set up a caste system where you have people who are in subsidized housing and others that are not, and there's some kind of qualitative difference between those people. There isn't. We all have rights and we all must be treated equally. So I agree with that. I agree with subsidies. I agree with finding other monies to help to do this task. And I look to the governor and Washington, D.C. to help us with these tasks. We need to lobby that. It's not going to happen by itself. I intend to be proactive. I'm not just going to go dormant once elected mayor. I will be proactive. The mayor is a single leader, chief executive officer, not one of many assemblymen and senators you have hundreds of. You have to be proactive, and that is my mantra. I will be proactive to get these problems resolved and get the advice that I need and set up the committees that need to be set up. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I was actually the first candidate to announce that I was running for mayor and the first candidate to put my housing plan on my website. And so included in my housing plan is that I've signed on to Sacramento Forward with 3 of my future colleagues on the current city council. And that includes actual inclusionary zoning, inclusionary housing, because what we want to make sure is that we're not defaulting to letting the market decide. The market has decided that 10,000 people will sleep on our streets. The market has decided that the rent will be unaffordable to the majority of Sacramentans, many of whom work in the public sector and are not seeing their incomes go up by the 9.3% that many of their rent increases are allowed to go up each year. So we can't continue to allow the market to decide and to allow people to pay out instead of allowing us to provide and requiring the provision of affordable housing is simply wrong-headed. What we need to do is make sure we can lower the cost naturally by doing things like doing a joint purchasing agreement for materials or making sure that we're able to do CEQA approvals in advance for the parcels we know might be prospected, or even looking to make sure that we can do community benefits agreements so that that won't hold up the process. There's a way to do it to lower costs and provide affordable housing.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarification of what the current policy actually is. The next question will be directed first to Dr. Richard Pan. The Sacramento County DA has filed a lawsuit against the city alleging it fails to enforce its ordinances regarding our homeless population. If elected, how would you address these allegations?
I'm proud that our district attorney, Tien Ho, has endorsed me for mayor because he needs a partner here in the city of Sacramento to work with him, someone who's going to try to address this out-of-control crisis of homelessness. People need to remember that when the DA, before he filed his lawsuit, he asked the people of Sacramento if there's action that needs to be taken, and 3,000 people came to him and said, look, there are problems here in Sacramento that we are not following through on. The other thing I would make note is that I think people are frustrated here in Sacramento because what they see is a lot of announcements, they see ordinances, and they don't see them being enforced. They don't see follow through. We're not implementing what we said we're doing. That's a problem. That's a loss of confidence and trust by the people of Sacramento. I will change that as mayor. It is time for us to follow through on the decisions we make and be accountable to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel?
Well, I'm very glad Diego did that. I admit I did not support him when he ran, but I support him now. Because what he's done is very important. What I do, if I was DA, and I did run for DA a couple of times. I was in this very room 30 years ago running for DA. So we need to force the city to enforce their laws, but the current administration isn't doing it. It's been just laissez-faire all along, nonfeasance. If I'm mayor, as I already told you, my triad, I'll be right there with him, and I'm glad he's supporting Dr. Pan. He's a very nice fellow, but I think in the end, he'll agree with me. We're both McGeorge graduates, as is my friend Hanson, and we will resolve this problem within a year.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I'm a scientist, so I always need things to make sense. And the DA's actions would make sense if they were actually leading to any housing. But the DA has not housed anyone. These are just political theatrics because he's trying to raise his profile so that he can run for attorney general. And we should not fall for it. What we are doing right now is wasting precious resources of the county and the city that would be much better spent on housing. So no, I don't support someone who was in office less than a year coming in and suing his colleagues instead of rolling up his sleeves and finding out how he can help. Because the truth of the matter is, if we enforce the current ordinances, which don't actually tell people where they can be, but simply criminalize their actual existence, all we do is filter them through our jails. And most of them are then going to be out of our jails in worse condition than they were when they went in. We released them at 2 o'clock in the morning without so much as a bus pass. And now they're in our downtown streets. It is unproductive. Just because your only tool is a nail doesn't mean every problem, or only tool is a hammer doesn't mean every problem begins to look like a nail. We need solutions other than law enforcement to address our housing crisis. Suing people does not house people, and so it is wrong-headed to use that approach.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
I have great respect for our DA and his role in the law enforcement criminal justice ecosystem. Having lived in the Central City for 16 years, I saw the city that I love and had fought for falling apart. Too many of my friends were assaulted trying to go to and from work. Houses across from us, a duplex and a fourplex, were burnt down by people who were unsheltered. Our daycare, which is also in the Central City, needles and feces around it, violence, drugs, theft. These aren't the actions of just regular people who are experiencing poverty or unshelteredness. When I was unsheltered, we didn't do that. We have to make sure that we're protecting our neighborhoods, our families, our small businesses. I think the lawsuit is unfortunate, but the city is fining a property owner for a mess right in front of their business, not caused by them. But the homeless camp that the city's created, they're not doing anything about. That double standard is not acceptable in the city of Sacramento, and I'll make sure that the city does enforce its laws.
Thank you. Let's move to mental health care. And this question will first be directed to Mr. Julius Engel. The statewide proposed Proposition 1, Mental Health Care and Addiction Treatment Reform and Bonds, is an interesting and difficult to understand proposal because while the bonds increase overall funds, These funds are earmarked to build treatment units and support housing, but have the effect of reducing counties' ability to set priorities based on local needs for mental health services. So how do you stand in your support of Proposition 1, and why or why not?
Well, you have to be careful with these kinds of things. The more complex they get, even those of us who've been lawyers don't always understand what the ramifications are and the ironic results of it are. And so we have to be careful and walk softly, especially when we're committing a lot of money to it. Where is that money going to go? Who's going to spend it and for what? And we need to have oversight. One of our colleagues who's not here today mentioned he got $25 million for a certain project from the Assembly, a previous forum. And $25 million is sitting there untouched. Hopefully it's still there and someone didn't take it away. But getting the allocations is enough. You must supervise, observe, follow up, make sure that money is going where it's supposed to. And I think we've been failing in that lately. I won't, because I'll have an oversight committee for that, a watchdog committee for that. We allocated this money for that purpose. Where is it now? Is it being spent like we said or not?
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
You know, I understand that Prop 1 comes out of a frustration, a feeling that we have these dollars that have been allocated for mental health, and we're concerned about making sure that they're spent in ways that also support housing and really the robust challenges that our community is facing. I lived downtown 11 years ago, and it's virtually unrecognizable now as a tent city. And so we do have to recognize that we need to do something to be able to address these challenges. But you know, sometimes we come up with solutions to problems that create more problems. And I anticipate that Prop 1 may, in fact, be just that we are hampering our locals from being able to pivot in ways that are important. We have 58 counties and over 500 cities in California. And so when we decide how people have to spend money at the local level in a one-size-fits-all manner, we sometimes don't allow a place like Sacramento, which is third behind New York and LA, to be able to address the real needs on the ground that may be different than a place like Kern County. And so I have some concerns about Proposition 1 for those reasons, to make sure that we have the freedom and flexibility to solve our local crises.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Well, I'm not surprised about this question because I read this morning the League of Women Voters did take a position to oppose Proposition 1, but I also read that over 80% of California voters support it. Everyone is very frustrated with the mental health crisis on our streets. People who need help don't have the capacity to accept help. Senator Susan Eggman from Stockton worked with our current mayor, who passed Prop 63 in 2004, to reshape it rather than just fund services, to also fund housing. And I know that's frustrating to our county partners who have very limited resources, but along with care courts, Laura's Law, the changes to the Lanterman-Petra Short Act, also known as 5150, we owe it to the people out there experiencing schizophrenia and all these other diseases to help them get better. And they need the beds, and they need a process to do that. And Prop 1 definitely creates that process and the beds. So I am very much in support of all of these reforms, because we can't let people die on our streets and hurt other people anymore.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
Thank you. Well, as your state senator, I chaired the Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services, which actually oversaw the Mental Health Services Act funding. And actually, our current mayor, Mayor Steinberg, was actually the author of the proposition. And he and I shared our frustrations about the lack of oversight of those funds. In fact, when I first came into that role in the state Senate, I noted that the state was not tracking how counties were actually using the money. And it turned out many of the counties were sitting on a lot of their money and were not actually using it, despite the tremendous need that's out there. We know that there's a shortage of treatment units for people who have severe mental health issues. We know that we have a shortage of housing supports for people that are unfortunately right now on our street. So I do support Proposition 1. Senator Eggman followed me in both the role of chair of the Health Committee and the Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services prior. We worked closely together. I think there's opportunities under the Medi-Cal program where we get federal match to continue to expand funding for mental health. But this is, I think, an important step in addressing some of our crises. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question, first to Dr. Flo Kofer, and it's really on gun violence. Many say reducing gun violence calls for more than registering firearms and trying to get guns off the streets. What strategies or policies have you supported to address gun violence prevention? And if elected, what will you forward to reduce gun violence in our communities?
I have supported all the things that have worked in Sacramento. Over the last decade, we've had 3 incidents where we have seen a decline in gun violence deaths in our city, in our region. The first one coincided with Operation Ceasefire. The second one coincided with the network of violence prevention and intervention workers in our nonprofits that got us 2 years with no youth homicides, no young people hanging RIP on the fences of our high schools. And the third one is most recently a 40% decline in violent crime owed to a $3.2 million investment in our nonprofits. So I'm really invested in public safety and doing what works. And it seems like every time we get to a place where something begins to work, we pivot and do something else, and the gun violence deaths go up. So I want to make sure that we are consistently funding what has worked in our region. That's something that I have worked on as a public health professional, that I championed as the chair of the Measure U committee, and that I will continue to champion as your next mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Gun violence is a scourge in our community. There is no doubt about it. But right now, the city has less sworn officers than it did during the Great Recession. And I think fully staffing the police department as we work through a budget crisis and set a goal is a key part of it. But also, while I was on the city council, we invested, and I voted for repeatedly, the Gang Intervention Task Force, which was a table with service providers, youth providers, law enforcement agencies to get at some of the root causes of what's going on and to prevent young people in particular from falling prey to people who were bad influences. Ceasefire and Brother to Brother showed the potential of community interventions. And I think the city will have no choice, given our budget deficit, but to lean on our county partners, our law enforcement partners, our healthcare providers, and everyone else to try to make sure that we do as much prevention, intervention, and enforcement to get guns off the street and help people make better choices.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Penn.
Thank you. As a doctor and public health expert, I take a public health approach to gun violence. In fact, in the legislature, I funded the creation of a gun violence research center at UC Davis. I also authored a law to create a violent death database so we can better identify the causes of violent deaths, including gun violence. And unfortunately, as a pediatrician, what the results show is that gun violence is the greatest cause of death in children. That is unacceptable. Now, how do we try to address gun violence? Well, first of all, the state, as a member of the state legislature, I voted for numerous gun control laws. Many of them are bumping up against the federal courts. So we will do what we can to reduce the number of guns out in the community. In fact, I even authored a bill that was endorsed by both the Brady campaign and the NRA because it would get guns out of people's hands. However, and bridging the gap between the two. However, we also need to support community organizations. So in addition to getting guns out of the streets, we also need to support community organizations that are going to work with our youth so that they are not engaging in violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Well, again, gun violence and violence with any weapons we've had over the centuries is always a problem. How do you control guns when you are also taking guns away from law-abiding citizens? I mean, how do you make sure it's only the criminals that are being affected? They shouldn't get guns, and law-abiding citizens should. What we really have now is law-abiding citizens have a tough time getting a gun to defend themselves, and criminals just steal the guns. They don't need a license. They're not going to apply for anything. In some cases, in my criminal law experience, they're making their own guns. They get to do that. They get parts online in some other states that allow it. And they make their own guns. So we really need to research that, and we need to, as previously said by one of my colleagues, have anti-gang task forces enforce both state and federal RICO acts, that's organized crime acts. These gangs amount to organized crimes. When you see those films where they're invading stores, that's racketeering. That's gang activity. That's a criminal enterprise. So we need to get help from those agencies as well.
Thank you. We're going to move to a question about policing. This question will first be directed to Mr. Steve Hansen. Policing policies and practices have been at the forefront of public discussion and review in recent years. Research has examined things such as law enforcement stops, use of force and misconduct, and the racial disparities in police interactions. How do you define public safety, and what may need to change, if anything, to build trust that law enforcement will serve all communities more equitably? And does your plan include any civilian oversight and/or review of law enforcement practices and policies?
I define public safety as very simple. When you put your kids to bed at night, are you safe and secure knowing that they're going to wake up tomorrow? Are you going to see your family members come home? Do you feel comfortable in your neighborhood such that you can live your life fully and freely without fear of violence, intimidation, or harassment? Our law enforcement is held to a very high standard, and we have to make sure that standard continues. The legislature, the city, continue to ensure that there's oversight. And our particular city took the forefront of that in passing use of force changes. While I was on the council, making sure as well that body-worn cameras were the standard, that the release of footage was the standard. We have some of the highest requirements for training. And we also want to make sure that when that officer leaves their family, her family, that their families know that they're going to return safely as well. And not having enough officers is a challenge for our community safety.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
Well, public safety means you can go about the city, your family, without worrying about being assaulted or even killed. People need to be able to go about our city and feel confident that they will get to their destination safely and return home safely. That's what public safety is about. Now, how are we going to achieve public safety? Well, we certainly need to build stronger relationships between our city government, and particularly law enforcement, and communities. The fact that we have so many vacancies in our police department is concerning because it means that our police officers are not able to spend time building relationships with the communities that they're supposed to protect. At the same time, we also need to have communities feel confident in law enforcement. If they feel that law enforcement is not there to help, then they're not going to cooperate and, in fact, perhaps feel less safe. So we need to change the culture in the city of Sacramento around policing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Well, I dare say I'm the only person on this panel with a law enforcement background, 7 years military police, 9 years Roseville Police, corrections. I do the math, and I can't believe I'm not 100 years old. But I have a lot of experience in law enforcement, and so I have specifics for you, not just generalities. Of course, we all want to be safe. But how? What do we do? Specifics, please. And what I would do is I'd reestablish the shooting panels we used to have under a previous district attorney that was disbanded for no apparent reason. We had both citizens and police looking over police shootings, because if our police don't have credibility, what do we have? So we need to bring that back. We need to have the FBI investigate fatal police shootings. Stephon Clark case, as you may remember, that was terribly handled, very politically tainted. You just have a third agency investigate it, like the FBI or state DOJ. It needs to show some accountability and some neutrality. So we have to win the trust of our community before the police can be even more effective than they are. Overall, we do have a fine police department.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I define public safety very similarly to our police chief, Kathy Lester, who in June said, public safety is a shared responsibility and not the community, the city, or the police department can do it alone. It is our ability to be able to experience well-being in the environment we live in. And so when those words were uttered, they were in response to some serious allegations that were quite substantiated against our police department for racially inequitable behavior. Black men, when pulled over, 82% of the time results in no citation, almost double that of white people when they're pulled over. So what that says to me is while we may have 100 vacancies, it doesn't appear that we're spending our police time particularly efficiently. And as we're facing a $47 million budget deficit, I am incredibly concerned that we streamline the spending we have to make sure that it is aligned with public safety outcomes. Outcomes like reductions in gun violence, outcomes like making sure that people trust our department. And that starts with engaging our police review commission. Our police department should be a partner to them and listen to them regularly. And if we can't do that, we're not on a place to be able to address the cultural issues in our city.
Thank you. We move now to a question or two about the environment. The first answer will first go to Dr. Richard Pan. What should voters expect from you on environmental and climate change action?
Well, certainly our climate crisis is an existential one for the world, and certainly there's a place for Sacramento to do its part. As your representative in the state legislature, I voted for many state laws to actually set goals and also reduce our carbon emissions. However, here at the city, local government's about implementation. How do we implement steps to try to be sure that we reduce our carbon footprint? For example, the largest carbon emission comes from transportation, right? So actually things like land use, infill, being sure that people can use transit or or walk, right, are going to be ways we can significantly reduce our carbon emissions. So certainly want to pursue policies and that would encourage that. By the way, public safety is part of that as well. If you ever see a school and you see everyone lined up trying to drop their kids off at school because they're worried it's not safe for the kids to walk, well, that becomes a carbon problem as well.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
Well, indeed, we need to continue to research those issues. Be careful of the monster you create. When you pass a statute or a set of statutes, it might actually do the opposite of what you're intending to do and may impede the advancement of the community. So we need to study it more. We do need to be observant of our climate and our environment. I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s. It was all about pollution. It was horrific. You drive through places like New York and you see black water. A lot of that has been cleaned up, so we are succeeding to a point in cleaning up our environment. But we must tread carefully and research and be sure of what we are doing. You don't want to create a monster that's going to eat you up. Address it, study it, correct it, but be careful when you do it. You don't want something too broad.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I served on both the Active Transportation Commission for the city as well as the mayor's appointee to the Climate Commission. And so we developed the Climate Action Plan. And part of what we need to do is make sure that we are implementing that plan. And that looks like starting with transportation as one of the greatest emitters of greenhouse gases. We need to make sure that we are electrifying our fleet as quickly as possible. That's a first step. We also need to make sure that active transportation is something that people can engage in on a regular basis. That our public transit system is actually running in ways that allows people to reduce the number of trips taken by car and to get where they need to go efficiently. Public transit should not be something that people rely on because they don't have a car. It should be an option for people to not have to have a car. And so if we're able to really invest in what the future looks like in a way that supports our health, we can move forward. And again, I think our budget will have enough money to be able to support these investments because they're important and because there is at least $50 million of waste that we haven't addressed in our budget that we certainly can.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Thank you. Our climate crisis is real, and it's the biggest intergenerational challenge that we face as a city, state, nation, and world. When I was on the council, I loved to bike and walk, and I made it a top priority for me to make sure it was safe in our city to do those things, to get out of your car. I helped pass our Complete Streets policy, our transit-oriented development policy. I led the way on Vision Zero. But since I left the council, I haven't served on the Climate Commission. I created the Active Transportation Commission to replace the ineffective City-County Bicycle Advisory Committee. Since I left, those initiatives have largely been dropped. The city has not prioritized the safety of getting people out of their cars, hasn't effectively ensured that we are continuing to support public transit. I will put those back at the top of my list. Too many people are dying on our streets. Even over the weekend, we saw another fatality. Just last week at 21st and X, a bicyclist was killed by a car. We have to make sure our streets are designed well, that we have the funding to make sure we do traffic enforcement, and that we're helping get people out of their cars.
Thank you. The next question actually deals with something that some of you have brought up in the answering this last question, and that's really about mass transit and the effective environment, et cetera. Low-density housing typically means more car traffic. As a regional partner, how do you balance this with Sacramento's support of mass transit and walk-bike alternatives, and what do you plan to do? And this will go first to Mr. Julius Engel.
Well, thank you. That's been also a problem all along, transportation, how we move ourselves to do the things we need to do. Growing up, I took mass transit, buses, subway, everywhere I went. I was the expert. I had the whole route memorized. So that was very effective for me. I didn't have to pay for a car. Of course, I was also a slave to the schedule of mass transit. And so mass transit is a very healthy thing for the environment, even going back to our earlier topic, and it needs to be developed. I think California had a bit of a reputation at one time as the brunt of jokes, how we really don't have mass transit at all. I think one stand-up comedian kept saying, I'm in Los Angeles, and yesterday I saw a bus. That was very funny. I actually saw a bus in Los Angeles. So we need to beef it up. And I mean, things are getting a lot better with BART, speed trains, and things like that. I fully support looking into that and improving mass transit with environmental concerns in mind, safety, of course, in mind. And it's a very fascinating field that I'm looking forward to developing.
Thank you. And I've been asked to repeat the question. So low-density housing typically means more car traffic. As a regional partner, how do you balance this with Sacramento's support of mass transit and walk-bike alternatives, and what is your plan as mayor?
It's incredibly important that as we continue to develop housing in our region, that we think about infill housing and we think about transit-oriented housing. And so I'm really proud that Sacramento already has a tradition of looking at those and planning new projects. And that's something that I plan to continue as your next mayor, making sure that when we are planning new projects, to make sure especially we are thinking about employment as well as housing, that we're looking at how far people have to travel, and also making sure that the routes that we have our buses traveling on are ones that people are traveling frequently. We don't want to have a system that was set up for a Sacramento that no longer exists. And so we want to make sure we can't change the hard rail lines because they've been drawn already, but we can certainly change the bus routes. And so that's one of the things that as mayor, I will work with our regional transit partners to make sure that those bus routes are running in places that people want to go and that they're oriented to making sure that people can, again, reduce car traffic so they can get where they want to go. And I've certainly had the experience of taking light rail somewhere and that it's not running when I leave a concert at Golden One. And so we need to fix those gaps in the system as well.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Low-density housing is happening because our state policies and some of our local policies used to enable that. We need to make sure that it's not more expensive to build in infill areas than it is in greenfield areas. So on the council, I lowered the barriers to entitlement. While people complain about CEQA all day, CEQA is something that cities can make a real difference in by making housing by right. Lowering fees. There's a proposal here on the table that would increase fees on infill housing by 2 or 3 times what Greenfield would pay before the council right now as part of the mixed income housing ordinance reform that my colleague here supports. Infill projects would pay $10 a square foot. Natomas Greenfield projects would pay $4 a square foot. That discrepancy will mean less dense housing gets built. I'm proud that my work on the City Council helped Sacramento become the first pro-housing designation given by California HCD of any city in the state, and we need to continue to make housing easier and cheaper to build.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
Thank you. Well, as a legislature, I was proud to represent Sacramento because of the pro-housing policies that our local governments, including the city, pursued. And at the state level, I worked with my partners in the legislature to actually pass laws to facilitate the construction of high-density housing, particularly around transit and other areas, and to facilitate things like ADUs and other expansions of housing. In addition to promote infill development, I partnered with SACOG to get funding for Green Means Go to help build out the infrastructure that was necessary that would facilitate infill construction, including housing. We need to work to lower the cost of housing so we can maximize the production of housing. And that includes infill. That also means more high-density housing as well. But we also know that too often the cost of construction, if it becomes cheaper over the border, that's where it happens. If it's cheaper in the greenfield, that's where it happens. So we need to work hard to be sure that the cost of building high-density infill housing is at least the same, if not less, than building elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question, and it will go first to Dr. Flo Kofer. Small businesses and innovation drive the economy. How will you help Sacramento support its small business and generate innovation?
When I joined the Measure U committee and actually helped to create it, one of the reasons I was really excited about it is because voters were promised that the dollars were going to be spent on inclusive economic development, on housing, and on the arts community. And those are ways to be able to innovate. Our arts community actually makes a lot of money for Sacramento, and inclusive economic development would mean that we would have dollars to be able to support small businesses outside of the downtown corridor, especially those that are in our historically underinvested communities in North and South Sacramento. And so I was frustrated when the council, which includes some of my opponents, did not vote to spend those dollars in accordance with how they were marketed to people in our community when we voted on them. And so serving on that committee was incredibly frustrating because we were constantly trying to get broken promises not to be broken. What I'm committed to is making sure that those dollars are invested the way that we promised to voters so that we actually do have every community being able to have what it needs so that we can serve the communities around us. And that's what you'll get from me as your next mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
I'm very proud to have helped start a small business in Sacramento and built it up to now having 9 people, and I will continue that work. Our city makes it too hard to open a business, to know what the rules are, and I will create in the mayor's office a small business ombuds person so that we can help people navigate the process to get open and to thrive. Too often the city doesn't throw a lifeline when someone needs help. We just don't do anything. We don't respond to them. I've helped so many small businesses, not only during my time on council, but before while I was on the Downtown Partnership Board and after advising people. A city, though, needs to be clean and safe in order to be successful. In prioritizing homelessness, public safety, and economic development, those are my 3 priorities. Helping each business thrive so their employees have a good quality of life, they feel safe coming to and from work, and this is a city where we can innovate. We have to transform our city's economy away from state government, and I'm the only candidate who can do that.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Penn.
You know, I'm a small business owner. We started the business from scratch, and so I know what it takes to build a small business. You risk your own finances on the line in the beginning. Oftentimes, you're digging into your own pocket to meet payroll, to meet the taxes and other expenses associated. During good times, everyone looks at you and thinks how much money you have, but you also know that when a downtime comes, you're the one who has to be sure that your employees still have a job and are still getting paid. It's important that our city supports small businesses. How can the city support small business? Well, one, don't get in the way. We need to be sure that when there are, like, for example, permitting, if you have to build out your location, that should be rapid and that should be responsive. And small businesses should not get caught between the two. We need to be sure the community is safe. A small business cannot succeed if the place the business is not safe. Customers will not come and employees may not want to go to work. There's much more we can do to support small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel?
Yes, I also owned a small business, a law firm, for a number of years, so I understand what my colleagues are saying. I've read my 5 points, and that helps our small businesses as well. A minimum wage of $19.50 will keep employees there. Your trained people won't leave so fast if they're getting a decent wage here. Free parking downtown, of course, will encourage people to come to our small businesses, not go to Roseville or Citrus Heights or Elk Grove where parking is free. It needs to be free here too. I don't know how we wound up charging for parking. Other cities don't. Why do we? So give them these incentives, these simple day-to-day incentives. It's easy to get there. It's easy to park. They have good employees that stay with them, seasoned employees, and that's what my points encourage. Of course, we reduce our SMUD bills. We reduce the business's SMUD bills as well. Easier for them to stay in business, easier for them to have more money in their own pocket for reinvestment, and to spend money on our economy, and it strengthens our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to the next question, first directed to Mr. Steve Hansen. Civic engagement is an integral part of the democratic process. When Sacramentans provide recommendations for city budgeting, how do you or how will you determine whether to support or reject community recommendation on funding a budget area?
Well, the city has a few main duties, just like any other city. Public safety, our parks, and to make sure our built environment is well functioning. Right now, the city has an estimated budget deficit of at least $50 million. And having sat at the council through difficult budget negotiations, through difficult budget hearings, sometimes the loudest voices aren't always representative of the public. We have a practice of surveying at budget time the public writ large to make sure that we are not just listening to the people who show up in the chambers, playing with us or screaming at us for what they want, but making sure that we have the public's interest writ large at heart. This is going to be a very difficult budget. Protecting core services will have to be done through efficiency, ingenuity, and a lot of collaboration with our employees and the community. And that's ultimately going to be how we navigate this. I know that everybody would like to have their particular thing funded, but ultimately there are trade-offs, and we have to make sure we protect the public in the process of setting our budget.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Pan.
When I was first elected to the state legislature, we had a $28 billion deficit in the state budget. And as you heard, we have a almost $50 million structural deficit in the city. And structural means that we're spending more than we're taking in on an ongoing basis. So it's not just a one-time event. It is very important to engage the public in budgets because budgets are about priorities. As someone who served on the budget committee in the legislature and held, hours and hours and hours of hearings, it is important to hear from people about what their priorities are. And actually, I have faith and trust in the public because during the Great Recession, when there was a state budget deficit, I went out to my constituents and talked to them about the state budget and the various things that were pulling at it. And they understood that. They understood that they couldn't have everything. But they also had their priorities, and they helped me guide me in what are the things that they cared most about within a budget that still was constrained because of the deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel.
I remember studying economics in college, and what a complex field it is, and you have to be careful of what you create. Okay, reducing a budget, you spend less. That's kind of the first common sense thing, but spend less on what? Tax what? I am very anti-tax and anti-fee, but we do have to have some of that. So we need to be circumspect on what we do. And the public must be heard. City council meetings are open to the public as they should be. I would have an open door policy for people to talk to me. And we'll just have to identify our priorities. Where to cut, that's always a question. If I say cut something today, that could change in a few months based on circumstances. So we have to stay on it. We can't be dormant.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
One of the reasons I'm proud to be a corporate-free candidate is because I can go into budget negotiations really representing the interests of people who live in Sacramento and not corporate donors. And so I am going into this process really thinking about how we elevate those voices, because this is a community of people who care. 30,000 people wake up early on Thanksgiving morning to do Run to Feed the Hungry to support the food bank. They have ideas and expertise that could help us govern this city. And when we only give them 5 days to be able to review things that are going to be decided on, we hamper the ability of our unions and our neighborhood associations and our nonprofits and our community members to actually give us the advice that will help us govern. Furthermore, when we're facing a budget deficit as we are right now, and yet we spent $300,000 at least back in 2020 to be able to pay management partners to give us 39 process and efficiency recommendations, and none of them have been considered and implemented, when we know that that could save us at least $50 million, that's the place I start. We can protect our core services and we can do so much more if we spend our dollars efficiently. And so I'll be bringing in community voice and also making sure that we actually put into place the plans that we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for.
Thank you. We'll move to now the last question of this portion of the forum, and we'll direct it first to Dr. Richard Pan. How do we improve the livability among neighborhoods, particularly those that struggle with unemployment, lack of affordable housing, access to health care, and perhaps a concentration of law enforcement engagement?
Well, when I served in the state legislature, I opened my district office on Florin Road in a community that was probably relatively less resourced than other neighborhoods in the community. We were next door to the Mi Rancho supermarket. I was across the hall from a family resource center. We had several, not only not-for-profits, but also small businesses in that complex. It was important to be where the people are and to listen to them and to think about what are things we can do to uplift that community. You know, I came to Sacramento originally to get doctors out in the community to strengthen our communities, to make them healthier and safer by being partners to the community, not to delivering healthcare services, although those were necessary, but actually to uplift the community. That is the approach that I would take as mayor. We need to work with each neighborhood and build on the strengths and assets of each neighborhood. They all have them. And by doing so, we can lift the communities and strengthen and address many of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Julius Engel?
Well, it is a daunting problem to present. Again, an age-old problem. How do you improve quality of life? And circumstances change, and then you also have to have some agreement on what to do. You can provide a program, provide a remedy that no one wants or most people don't want, and it just doesn't work, which would work if enough people went along with it. So it's a problem that's not going to end overnight. We need to continue to look for different remedies. Speaking to the community, speaking to community leaders is the way to do it. Our open council meetings are one way. A lot of people don't go there, but that's one way. My open door policy would add to that. We just have to wait and see and continue to do the best we can. There is no one solution.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
You know, it's really great that we're having this conversation in the county building, because in my day job, I actually am the technical assistance provider for the Community Health Improvement Plan for Sacramento County. And one of the things we're working on is livability. We are taking one particular census tract, which happens to have some of the lowest indicators in the entire county, and it's the finger that intersects the city and the county. And we're working on things like access to care, especially now that we have expanded access to Medi-Cal to people who are undocumented. And we're looking at access to culturally appropriate foods. And we're thinking about poverty alleviation and making sure that we're connecting to people who are recruiting for union jobs or SMUD or some of the other employers in our region, and also trying to help with seeding small businesses. We're thinking about access to mental health care in particular, and also making sure that people who are at imminent risk of homelessness are able to stay in their housing. And so when we think about livability, we think about those community connections. We think about people having what they need in their communities. And as a public health professional with over 20 years of experience, that's what I'm bringing. Systems thinking to the mayor's office to be able to think about how we create an entire city that works for everyone, not just the rich and wealthy.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
Over generations, redlining, systemic inequities and disinvestment have left Del Paso Heights, Old North Sacramento, Robla, Gardenland, Meadowview, many of the neighborhoods that we're talking about behind. The city has an amazing opportunity here that I think is very unique to help drive investment, drive entrepreneurship, because in these neighborhoods, there are incredible, incredible people trying to open businesses, trying to build housing. And what we need to do is first get out of the way. Right now, the city makes it too hard. One of the biggest things I hear in these very neighborhoods is homelessness. The same crisis that affects everyone affects them even more. 2, public safety is a huge crisis. They are worried about how to safely live, safely run a business, and we need to make sure that things like Casabella's, the fire at Casabella, the intentional burning down of it on Del Paso Boulevard doesn't happen anymore. These things are happening too much, and as mayor, I want to make sure those neighborhoods have a voice.
Thank you. And that completes the question and answer portion of the forum. Thank you for participating in all of those questions. We'll move now to closing statements. Each candidate has a 1-minute possibility for a close. We'll start with Mr. Julius Engel.
Well, again, thank you for having me. I think meetings like this are very important to get the word out. I am the candidate of action. I am the one that will join forces with the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office to resolve our homeless problem. I'll give you things you can feel on a daily basis. You will know on a daily basis, not just general theories and principles, but something that actually improves your quality of life, like a $19.50 minimum wage, a lower SMUD bill, and free parking downtown. And when you go to your schools, drop your kids off, you'll have a sense of even greater security than what you have now, because they will have the assets and the equipment to ensure school security more than it is now. We know school can be a dangerous place, and it isn't supposed to be. So that's why I ask you to elect me, Engel for Mayor. I have a website, engelformayor.com, the number 4 for 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Flo Kofer.
I am the mayoral candidate with the experience and with the understanding of our community challenges to meet the moment. If we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And we can't rely on the people who oversaw this, who were in office when we saw our homelessness numbers quadruple, to be able to recycle the same ideas and get us out. To tell us that rent control is sufficient when I knock on doors and hear from people, they're telling me that it's not enough. To tell us that inclusionary housing as it currently is okay when people are saying they can't afford housing. To tell us it's okay for politicians to infight when the truth is that's not helping us lead our communities. I have more organization, labor, and community endorsements than any of my opponents. I've knocked on more doors. I'm not taking corporate money so I can support you. And I have actual solutions that I have identified with surgical precision that I want to partner with you to put into place. And so I invite you to go to flowformayor.com and join our people-powered movement. We really invite you in. This is for the people who have not felt like government has had a voice for them, but this is to serve our entire community. And I invite you to join us and vote for me on March 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Hansen.
When I left office 3 years ago, I never intended to run again. But after the indignities our city has been suffering around homelessness, crime, the lack of opportunity, I looked at my family and said, I know how to fix this, and I have to do something. My boys deserve, just like every other family in this city, a healthy, happy place to live, to thrive and grow. And as a former council member, I know how the city works. I help build programs to make more housing, to create better partnerships with the county on homelessness, and to help our businesses thrive. And it's why I'm supported by the voices of small business. I need your help, though. I need you to join me. I need your vote, and I humbly ask that you vote for me and go to steveforsacramento.com, volunteer, take a lawn sign, and if you will, consider donating. We have to save our city, and we have to fight for it. This is our city and our future, and I look forward to, as your mayor, helping to put it back on track.
Thank you. And Dr. Richard Pan.
Thank you. I love this city. I got married here. I'm raising 2 children here. And unfortunately, this city's off track. Now, when I served in public office, I brought a record of getting things done. When I came into office, people said the state budget deficit was intractable, that California was ungovernable. We had a $28 billion state deficit. When I left office, we had a $30 billion reserve. When I came into office as a doctor, people said the uninsured rate was basically, we couldn't bring that down. It had been at 17, 18% for decades. By the time I left office, we lowered the uninsured rate to 7%. That's getting things done, delivering results. We need a mayor who will deliver results. I appreciate all the ideas, but we're not lacking in ideas. And I'm going to take the best of those ideas and make things happen. It's time to actually act with urgency on solving our top problems. That includes our homeless issue, that includes public safety, that includes economic development. Please vote for Dr. Richard Pan for mayor so that we can solve the problems facing our city. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to each of the candidates for participating in today's forum, and also the many volunteers it takes, both with the League of Women Voters and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Commission, to make this forum possible and to be televised. It will be re-televised, rebroadcast a number of times prior to the March 5th primary. Again, you can find that information at www.youtube/metrocable.14. The League of Women Voters encourages you, the voter, to learn as much as you can about the many candidates and issues facing us as voters on March 5th. For more information, please visit vote411.org. All of us know the enormous amount of money spent on campaigns to communicate to voters, although less so at the local level. But the League of Women Voters offers candidates an opportunity to communicate directly with voters for free at vote411.org. Consider joining the League of Women Voters. It is where hands-on work to safeguard democracy does lead to civic improvement. Please remember to vote on March 5th and help this democracy work. Thank you.